Hi, David.
Hi, Corinne. How are you?
Good, thanks. So we've been talking a little bit about Bose and consumer engagement and how you guys engage with consumers on a physical level, but also a very exciting brand. Bose has recently been named one of Profit's top 5 most relevant brands in consumers' lives, known for very high quality products and helping people escape into music or other chosen soundscapes, or just block out the din of reality, in my case, that noise canceling. But you know, David, your brand has a very intimate relationship with consumers. Can you give us an intro into how Bose engages with consumers through sound?
Absolutely, and I think intimate is a good choice of words. Of course, it's an honor to be on Profit's top 10 list, and among those great brands that we're surrounded by there. The relationship that Bose has with our customers or the consumer population in general is about delivering the sounds that they want to hear when they want to hear them and where they want to hear them. More than 50 years now as an R&D company, because that's really what we are. We're a research company that happens to fund its own growth and next year's research by selling products that consumers love. And so that relationship with our customers is really, really, really important to us. Always trying to anticipate what a consumer might be needing in their lives, but using our past history in research like psychoacoustics to understand those latent needs that consumers might not otherwise express outwardly and deliver products they never imagined could even be possible.
David, can you explain psychoacoustics for the audience a little bit? And
not very well.
Like maybe nerd out on favorite psychoacoustic fact or product that Bose has created?
I will be the first to tell you I am not an engineer, but in layman's terms, because that's how I understand it, psychoacoustics is really a study of understanding how humans hear, how sound is processed as it enters effectively your brain, and how you and the resulting impact that can have.
Mm-hmm. And what's one of your favorite historical stories or products that have come out of one of these latent consumer need discoveries?
There are so many. I'm wearing one of them. These are our noise canceling headphones called QC35. It's an earlier series. There was a Dr. Bose. He passed away back in 2013, but one of the I think coolest inventions that he and the rest of the company ever made are noise canceling headphones. The story goes, and in fact, we have some video and his handwritten notes from this story. Dr. Bose was flying back from Switzerland with his wife. And that was back in the days in the 80s when audio on airplanes was pretty awful. You had to turn up the volume so loud to hear, you know, the handed out headphones, the free headphones, that you really couldn't discern anything else. It was headache inducing. There was static from all the things going on around the jet engines and such. And Dr. Bose on that flight home, he was a classically trained musician and loved classical music. Oh. He actually wrote the algorithm for how it was possible to cancel sound with sound. So effectively looking at the sound waves caused by the noise in the airplane and being able to send an opposing signal into the ear cup so that the listener could hear what they wanted to hear versus the ambient noise around them. That's one of the most incredible discoveries I think he and the rest of the folks in engineering at the time made.
Can you imagine if I complete a PowerPoint on an airplane? I feel like a hero. Here we are, like revolutionizing the industry just on the way home because I had some time. I
just hope to get through my email inbox when I'm flying, you know, let alone discover something that has made a material impact in people's lives like this.
That's so great. So I also am delighted when I hear new terms in the industry, and you had a great one I hadn't used before, B2B2C. Can you tell everyone a little bit about your role in the automotive division and B2B2C marketing responsibilities?
Absolutely. I've been at Bose about 14 years and have worked across all of our business divisions, including consumer electronics, professional, and automotive. And about 3 years ago, I joined the automotive division and had a great learning experience. It was my first time really in the B2B marketing space. And what I quickly realized was, I'll just give you a quick backstory on this. Our customers for automotive are original equipment manufacturers of automobiles, OEMs for short. We don't sell directly to consumers. There are no aftermarket audio products that you can buy for your automobile. So we sell directly into manufacturers. However, consumers are the people who actually buy the cars. And while there's probably very few people in the world who can tell you what audio system they have in their car, having a Bose system in your car is one of those exceptions. Most people who have a Bose system in their car know that. Not per se because they shopped for that vehicle because it had a Bose system, but they chose to make the additional investment required to get to the trim level in the vehicle in order to have the Bose system. And so B2B to C is our reflection on the fact that even though our targets generally for our Marcom initiatives are generally our customers at the OEMs, whether it's an engineering manager, a purchasing manager, a brand manager, consumers play a role in the choices that those OEMs make when choosing the audio system to keep in their car.
So how do you manage dealing with all these partners, from the OEMs to tech company and integrating in B2B2C? How do you align and stay true to your brand attributes when you have such a well-known and valuable brand that is so recognized and has that pull strategy for the end consumer? How do you protect and promote Bose while also being a great partner to all of these other companies and brands?
Well, partnership is really important. I said a moment ago that these OEM brands are our customers. They are also our partners. And one of the things that I think that we do well as a partner, and that each of our OEM customers does well also, is recognize that the primary brand represented in a car is the automaker's brand. Mm-hmm. There's no exceptions to that, really. However, an automaker like General Motors is bringing Bose into their vehicle lineup for a reason. It's brand recognition and credibility, willingness to pay for the consumer standpoint. And so acknowledging the Bose brand is in the vehicle is also important. So it's really about balance. It's really about respecting and understanding each other's brands really well. In fact, there's probably only 20, 25 automakers in the world, so the list isn't big. And Bose tends to focus on those brands with whom we have some synergy between Bose and their vehicle brands.
Got it. And how do you focus your marketing efforts when it comes to establishing Bose as, we talked a little bit about thought leadership and how you approach that and think about that that's relevant for your partners and the consumers. Can you give me some examples or general approach to thought leadership in branding and marketing for Bose?
Absolutely. So the way that we think about thought leadership for Bose is I'm going to state the obvious. We tend to engage there in subjects that we believe we have some expertise in. Thought leadership for us isn't about lead generation, really. With such a small pool of manufacturers in the world, we already know most of the decision makers and influencers within those brands. And so thought leadership to us is about remaining relevant in front of them and sharing where we can, because we have to protect our future IP, of course, but sharing where relevant, how we can participate in and help deliver on future trends that are coming, needs that the automakers have around safety and cybersecurity and things like that. Because believe it or not, an audio system can help with those types of things. Yeah.
So focusing on this, the whole ethos of the company, this customer first R&D, it's clear, you really understand what's happening with the consumer when it comes to audio. How does that translate to the car and the car cabin?
It's a great question. Our very first product was called the 2201 speaker. That was an invention of Dr. Bose and his early colleagues when he started the company. The 2201 had literally 22 speakers in it. And it was meant to really create a spatial experience in anyone's living room. You would need one in each corner of the room, and you could fill your room like a concert hall. They were a little odd looking. They were an eighth of a sphere, 22 drivers looking at you in the room, and they were big and heavy, frankly. They were made out of wood cabinetry. They were all handmade. So the experience was what people wanted, but the physical experience wasn't what people wanted. We migrated to, upon reflection, the 901, which we just stopped selling about 4 years ago. So it was a product that stayed in the marketplace for more than 40 years. And it was 9 drivers, 2 of which were facing the front of the room, the rest of which were facing the back of the room or into the wall. And what that created was this direct reflecting experience that filled the room literally with sound, but you didn't need 22 drivers to do it. And so that invention of understanding that even though everybody's living room is different, we could make them sound like a concert hall. Dr. Bose and the team of engineers that invented our automotive business realized that the car cabin, if we could develop partnerships with equipment manufacturers, it was all known quantity. We didn't have to worry about what kind of carpeting or drapes or sofa you might have in your living room or how far away from your stereo speakers you were, because all of those things were defined through the engineering drawings. And so we could actually create an experience for the driver and passenger, driver and multiple passengers that was curated for that exact vehicle, engineered for that exact vehicle. And so everyone's experience who drove that vehicle would be the same. Wow.
And you really hit on something that is so aligned with the Bose brand, which are these long-lasting products that the 109 being in market for 40 years, and thinking about automobiles and today's market, you know, where used cars or my dirty old Subaru could probably get a good price, you know. How do you think about the longevity of these products, and when did this integration first start? Are there products that you're equally as proud of that have been in the market just as long?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really interesting because Bose builds products with longevity in mind, right? Quality is really important factor for us. We are a premium priced brand by really any measure in the consumer landscape. The Wave radio, which I'm sure most people on the call are familiar with. Some might think of the Wave radio as the thing that their parents had on the kitchen counter, and others might think of the Wave radio as something that they have even today. The Wave radio has that many years in market, probably more like 30 years in market. Again, a product that we just recently stopped selling. My mother, for example, keeps hers out on the veranda at her home in Florida. It's been out there for 20 years outside. Wow. And it still works, and it works great, and it sounds great. So quality is really, really important to us. It has a significant impact on brand perception, and we value that tremendously. Keeping customers for life is part of what we aspire to.
Wow. And so when that translates to the car and in the car cabin, how do you think about longevity in automotive, and when you're starting to think about what things are going to look like?
Well, isn't that wild? Because the average car, I don't have these facts in my head, but I'm going to make an educated guess. Average consumer owns their car for less than 7 years. And so you're constantly getting some switching in ownership, which you're not really in a Wave radio or a pair of headphones, right? I mean, there's off-market opportunities with things like eBay and Craigslist and things like that, but that's not really happening as often as with an automobile. And so the quality and the experience that we build into the car that you buy day one will help influence you the next time you buy a car. And the person who buys the used Cadillac, let's use them. GM was our first OEM partner, and Cadillac was the first automobile that Bose put a sound system into. When someone buys that Cadillac used, again, they're not buying it because of the Bose sound system, but the experience they get has a carryover effect the next time they're deciding which headphones to buy or which Bluetooth speaker to buy when they're either online or in a retailer. Wow. It's very important.
And how do you go about delivering that experience? What are some examples or stories you can tell us that might make somebody take note, like, oh, I'm glad I have a Bose, or there's a Bose in here, and I've noticed because of these extra features that don't usually happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, and this is in the automobile or in a pair of headphones. I mentioned earlier spaciousness and clarity. Vocal clarity is really, really important. Dr. Bose had a mantra about what our audio products delivered. And that is that they are as close, reproduction, right? We're reproducing sound as close to the natural instrument as possible. So that when you hear a guitar or a violin or a stand-up bass through your headphones or in your car, don't do this while you're driving, but you could close your eyes and imagine that instrument being played on stage in front of you because it's so clear, crisp, and authentic to how it was originally created. Those things are very, very important to us in the consumer experience. Another example in the car, vocal clarity, I mentioned just a second ago. So important when you're driving, if you're on a conference call, which we should try to avoid. Certainly don't turn on your screen so you can watch the PowerPoint fly by, but it's important to have a reduced level of cognitive load while you're a driver. You're, after all, supposed to be focusing on what you're doing and what's happening in front of you, behind you, all around you, really. But when you're on a conference call, if you struggle to hear a voice or understand who's speaking among a conference call of many, your cognitive load goes up for the purpose of listening to the call and participating, and your awareness of what is going on around you goes down. So Bose aspires to reproduce the human voice as close to the actual voice that's speaking as possible.
Wow. So at a company that really embodies and lives R&D every day, how does that spill over to you as a marketer in consumer research practices when you're thinking about this in-cabin experience or what consumers want at the end of the day? How does that spill over to your consumer research efforts on a marketing side?
That's a great question. You know, consumer research, I'm preaching to the choir here with those folks who are attending, but consumer research is all about learning what's most important to the consumer and how you can positively impact that as a brand. Corinne, I didn't mention this when we've been talking about this call for today, but here's a story I'll tell the group. I was involved in a research project and actually was in a focus group situation where I was listening behind the mirror. And there were a group of consumers in the room, and we were talking about the importance of, how shall I say, what you hear within your headphones. And there was a pilot in the room, and we didn't realize it. And we were talking about vocal clarity, speech intelligibility through microphones and things like that. And we were getting their reaction to a story that we had heard from a commercial pilot who uses Bose headphones. And he talked about how it's great that he can hear the tower more clearly when they're getting ready to land a plane. Seems like a great reason for vocal clarity and microphone pickup that is easy to for the tower to hear and back and forth. The pilot in the room was a former Marine. And he said, I'll take it one step further. It is important to hear the control tower and be able to communicate clearly back and forth with them. It is even more important to hear the 4 jets around you who are traveling at hundreds of miles an hour, that everybody turns at the same time.
Wow.
And it was a really powerful, powerful moment in that research environment to say, you know, we've been telling this story one way, but that's an even more important reason to talk about vocal clarity and speech intelligibility and such.
Wow. And I mean, talk about, there's no other level when you get to safety with engagement and sound. That's so unbelievable.
That's exactly right. To track a little bit more toward your question, though, I wanted to share that story because I thought it was really, really powerful. But around research, Bose is very careful that we tie our consumer product focused research with our automotive product focused research. And so I said it in the beginning of the call, the consumer who buys a car is the same consumer who buys our headphones, right? They're shopping for, at some point, the audio experience that they're looking for. And so we have to make sure we understand when an OEM brand furnishes their consumer profiles to us, that we can quickly match them up to our own and look for that sweet spot in terms of the brand that we're talking about going to market together in, and making sure that there's synergy there. And then, of course, when we get to the launch related campaign, Marcom related to the vehicle launch, we make sure we're talking to that crossover, sort of the classic Venn diagram example of where do we match up, and let's talk to those folks.
It feels like something that Bose has been doing for so many years that has become popular to talk about in marketing circles, which is customer first, but by that we mean a little bit more than your CRM system or the follow-up email saying thank you and here's a sticker for your purchase. It's literally, who is this as a human being and how do they engage with all our products across the spectrum, and what do they need that they don't know that they need yet. That's really pretty inspiring. One thing I wanted to follow up on and ask you about was Bose's MIT connection and how you look at that, another aspect of research for the company.
Thank you for asking. It's a great sense of pride for all of us. Dr. Bose, again, a real person, an amazing person, actually, graduated from MIT. And he went on to teach there for more than 40 years, actually. And so Bose Corporation has always had a very close relationship with MIT, the university. I shared with you earlier that I actually have had a chance to mentor some of the business incubator students groups on helping them launch their businesses. So great relationship with MIT already. But before he passed, Dr. Bose did something really extraordinary. He donated the majority of non-voting shares of Bose Corporation to MIT. So MIT is actually our parent company, if you will, or owner. It's an extraordinary relationship. MIT takes no interest in how we operate the business. In fact, they don't have a say in how we operate the business, but they reap the benefits of our performance on an annual basis through a basically dividend approach. And that dividend is reinvested back into the university, either through scholarship programs, funding those business incubators, stipends for staff who are in deep research projects, things like that. And it's a really reciprocal relationship. One, we're never going to be a public company. Being a private company and self-funded company has been the cornerstone of Bose since the beginning. Nobody tells us what to invest our R&D dollars in or what products to bring to market or any of that stuff. And that's really important. Remember, we're a research company. We fund our research by selling products, but all of that profit goes back into research the following year. And so one of the cool parts about our relationship with MIT is we get access to some of the most brilliant minds in the world. Students want to come to work at Bose because they understand the legacy and the relationship, and they understand the importance of continuing that relationship. And so you might come in as a co-op or an intern as an MIT student. Those folks tend to stay after they graduate or are invited back because of their contributions to the company. It's a very cool relationship and pretty unique.
Yeah, so you have a founder with incredible foresight that takes the long view, but it seems like everyone at Bose is playing a very long game too. There's always a lot of looking, it's not the next 12-month plan, it's what do consumers want now, 12 months from now, and in the future. How has that affected you as a marketer, and particularly in automotive when nothing's really that quick, or things don't, it's not a beta overnight kind of category. How does taking the long view at Bose and these longer sales cycle affect your role?
It's a great question. Our sales cycles can be up to 2 years. It might be 2 more years in engineering development before the car actually hits the market. And so you've got this 1 to 5 year window where you're not really talking about what's going in the next vehicle lineup. You have to be prepared for that because you want to obviously stay on trend as much as you can in terms of being in front of the consumer and our customers with what we're developing and sort of how we're impacting the world of audio, to kind of encapsulate everything. You also have to be very patient, right? Those are long cycles, and any brand involved in the automotive space or in most manufacturing spaces would realize that same type of cycle. And so research that we do today, for example, with the consumer, may or may not still be relevant in 2 to 4 years when we go to market with what we researched. And so there's risk to that, of course, and you have to mitigate the risk by just staying on top of it. Continuous cycles of consumer research, staying close to them, making sure we understand and we share with our partners what we understand about the consumer's needs is very, very important.
Right, and it doesn't mean there's not space for pivot. You taught me what an amplifier was, and gave me an example of a product tweak there as well.
Yeah, for the group, my definition of what an amplifier does is it makes things sound louder. It powers the speakers, right? But the story that Corinne is referencing is in the automotive world, probably 6 or 7 years ago. Particularly, it started in Europe and then has migrated to the United States. When you were driving your car, newer vehicles, of course, and you stopped at a red light or a stop sign, the car would shut off, and that was to save emissions and fuel. What happened when the car shut off in the early days is the radio would shut off. And when I'm driving in my car, my radio shuts off, I look at the speaker or the head unit, right? The head unit is the set of controls in the center console. And the perception might be from a consumer that something's wrong with my Bose system. One of our engineers, without being asked by any of our manufacturers or anybody internally, this is how the story goes, in our Germany office, took it upon themselves to tweak the amplifier just a little bit. Remember, our amplifiers are smart, so they have basically computer systems in them. Tweaked the signal processing just a little to make sure that the stereo stayed on even when the car shut off. And there's a very minimal drain on the battery during that length of time. It's usually less than a minute or two. Made a big difference to our manufacturers, who really liked the change because it improved the experience for the driver, for the passengers as well.
Great. I love that story. I have a question in the Q&A. Someone wants to know if, Lisa Girding from Public Good wants to know, are we engaging consumers in purpose initiatives such as sustainability, DEI, or equity, how Bose approaches that?
It's a great question. We tend to take that as a corporate question, right? And so the short answer is yes, we are engaging consumers to try and understand that. From an automotive perspective, it's been a really interesting change in the past year, I'll say, where our automotive partners are starting to stipulate requirements related to future production vehicles and levels of sustainability and recycling, things like that. It's become a very important topic, and I'm really happy to say that Bose has a very focused initiative on not only delivering on what our manufacturers are asking for, our auto manufacturers, but also what's important to consumers.
Right. We talked a little bit about how what's important to consumers, especially in the cabin, has changed, and how things have changed because now it's a touch screen and everything's controlled from the center console. Are there other examples of different consumer experiences in cabin that have changing or have changed over the past 5 years that you're tracking and adapting to?
Absolutely. Safety is probably the most important one. So anybody who drives nowadays in a relatively recent vehicle is familiar with the warning sounds that they get when something is happening in front of them. One of our family cars is a Subaru, and it has got cameras everywhere, right? It gets to the point where you're like, I know I'm not in the lane. I understand. I forgot to put my directional on. But at any rate, safety systems are critically important. What tends to happen is any warning comes from the center stack where the driver is looking, the speedometer, et cetera. That's where the sound comes from. But if something's happening behind you that you're getting a warning from, and you hear it in front of you, it takes a split second to process that. A split second longer. Exactly. A split second longer as a consumer to process that. Imagine if instead the warning came from the rear channel speaker on the right side of the vehicle where the issue was happening. You're backing out of a parking space in a parking lot and you get a warning that someone's behind you from there. It's a much easier or lower level of cognitive load for you to process that than it is if it were coming from in front of you. So that's one example. Another example, and we're starting to see this in some vehicles already, but imagine if the driver were on a phone call and the passenger could continue listening to music and not hear that phone call. And conversely, the person on the far end of the phone call who's talking to the driver can't hear the music. Those are the types of experiences that we're talking about that can really materially change what happens in a car and really materially change the experience for those who are in the cabin.
Absolutely. I wouldn't even think it was possible. Talk about a unmet need or an unspoken need for consumers. So we've talked a lot about Bose. It's obviously an incredible company, and you think so too because you've been there for 14 years
Yes.
in different roles. But can you tell us a little bit about your career, how you got to Bose, and in Bose, how you moved over to automotive?
Absolutely. Most of my career, I'll be the first to admit, and I've been told plenty of times by my creative colleagues, I am not a creative person. My marketing career has been focused on identifying sort of that really translating between objectives within a corporation or a division, and how you can translate that into marketing communications that will help deliver on those objectives. So I am the I think these are all D's, the details person in the marketing organization, who can identify sort of timing and budget required, really the brief. I'm sort of a marketing generalist, if you will. My career has been broad and not particularly deep in any area, but that has served me really, really well at Bose. I started my career here a long time ago in our internal advertising agency as a program manager with all internal clients, but working with them on project managing their creative requirements of the internal agency. Switched to a more strategic role within that same group, managing the entire account services team. So having both the combination of strategy and brand management, and then project execution as well. Then I moved into a purely brand management role in around 2015, and worked across the organization actually to help to translate what it meant to deliver on the Bose brand promise, whether you were sitting in sales or marketing or engineering or finance, or you were in somewhere within the corporate infrastructure. You were the person who made sure the meeting rooms were set up on time, those types of things. So really about brand deployment across the organization. And part of that, and I'll try to wrap up my history at Bose, part of that engagement, I worked within the automotive division on a brand valuation project, trying to determine how we fit in with our competitors in the automotive space particularly, and being able to communicate the value of the Bose brand compared to some of our competitors to an automotive OEM to help influence the purchasing decision. When that program finished, when that research project finished, I was asked to join the automotive division, not because I'm a great researcher, because my experience there is very shallow, but because we got it done on time, and it had a material impact on the divisional goal of acquiring new business. And so joined automotive as the sales and marketing operations lead, have since taken on brand strategy for that same group. And I also wear the chief of staff for the division hat. So I've got a few different hats. Again, I'm a generalist, but I love that. It's part of what's kept me at Bose is I get to touch a lot of different things. Helps me understand our consumer. It helps me understand how our business is run. And my passion is around communications and marketing. And so I'm still able to stay in that lane as well.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity and added responsibility when you are the details person. What is something in marketing that you think is critically important, if not undervalued area of focus that makes a great marketer or a great marketing organization?
It's a great question. I would advise anybody who's thinking about marketing this way. This is my perspective, right? Strategy and planning is really, really important. If you don't understand where you're heading or where you intend to head, you're just kind of throwing money out the window, wasting resources, not connecting where you need to, and not ultimately delivering value for the organization. However, if you don't work the plan and adjust the plan based on near-term performance and where you're heading, you might as well not have written the plan to begin with. So my passion is around execution. I can certainly play in a room full of strategists. I can add value there, sort of dissecting what we're trying to achieve and what are the best tools and tactics to be able to try and achieve that, how you can leverage sales and marketing to be able to achieve those goals. But my passion is around getting it done and seeing the results. I'll share a story with the group. It's a bit of an embarrassing story, but it explains me a little bit. When I was with Dunkin' Brands back in the 90s, a long time ago, but I've been around a while, Dunkin' was celebrating its 50th anniversary. And I was based in Atlanta, Georgia. And so we were out front of CNN Center to help celebrate the 50th anniversary, had a big event planned, and not very technically advanced, but we had a person who was going to come and walk around in a donut costume there in front of the event. Well, that person didn't show up, and I was the lead for the area and sort of running the event and things like that at the time. And so the company we had hired was very apologetic. Don't worry, we'll get somebody here soon. We'll have somebody here within an hour or two. Well, the event was only a couple hours anyway. I said, give me the suit, I'll wear it. And it was pink tights and big orange shoes and a giant donut costume. And my wife keeps that photo of me, which no one can tell because I'm in a donut costume, on the shelf now. The lesson there is be willing to do whatever it takes to execute that plan, right? And be willing to show your teams that you're willing. That is probably the most important lesson. Don't ask people to do stuff that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself.
Oh, I love that. And it sounds like great advice for also people starting out their careers. People are shuffling around and changing careers a lot right
Absolutely.
now in marketing as well. But you've made Bose sound like a pretty great place for a lot of listeners. So I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask speaking about this Bose brand promise and a Bose ethos and working, what do you look for in team members or hires at Bose that you think are important qualities?
It's a great question. Of course, you need positional fit, right? You have to have some experience in what it is we're looking for from a resource, and that's important. But as important, or maybe a little more important, in fact, it's more than a little, it's the most important, is fit within the culture of the organization. Bose has well documented and long in the tooth, but for a good reason, essence and values and guiding principles. And I've worked at a lot of different companies who say they have essence and values and guiding principles. And there's a plaque on the wall, and that's about as far as it goes. With Bose, you're held accountable to those. It's in our quarterly, half-year, and annual performance reviews, how I perform against those essence and values. My peer reviews are based on that as much as they are on my individual performance. So fit within the organization is really, really important. Understanding our long-run point of view, not being in a hurry for achievement. Personal achievement has to be put on the back burner. It's really about producing achievement for the company and thereby for the consumer. Passion for what you do, and then sharing your expertise within the company, because that's why we're hiring you. It's not because we want you to become a Bose robot. There's really no such thing here. It's about the individual, the diversity that they can bring in both experience and thinking to the organization to help make us better.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's really helpful for anybody who's maybe as intrigued as I am about learning more about this company, because it's really an incredible story. It's an incredible founder, and it's really great stuff that you guys are doing. David, you've made me want to realize, first of all, that the cabin of my car can be a haven, and then to escape to it. Maybe take a sound bath. I don't know. Is that in the works?
I can't say. That's advanced R&D.
But I really love thinking about how many marketing strategy plans I've seen that say we're going to take the surround sound approach. It's just jargon. But thank you for raising the bar on that and making it a real thing, and inspiring us to work the plan and helping understanding what it really means to be customer first. Is there anything else about either advice or something you're excited about in marketing going forward that we want to just kind of end on, something you're pretty excited about for 2022 and looking forward the year?
I think we're all probably excited of gaining a little more mobile freedom. I have my first business trip planned for 3 weeks from now. So that alone, being able to get in touch with customers, literally be in the same room with them, is something that I think we probably all undervalued.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about being back. I had a breakfast meeting with a colleague of mine, and we've been working together for a couple of years. And she walked up to me and said, "Hi, Dave, I'm Amy." And I I looked at her and said, of course you're Amy. I know you're Amy. And then it struck me. We'd never met in person.
Oh, wow.
It was wild. We've become conditioned to this type of relationship, an on-screen relationship. And it's not all bad, right? We've all been very, very productive, even with that sort of constraint on us. But really being able to get in the same room with the customer and in translation with the consumer, I'm really, really looking forward to that.